I think we can go ahead and get started since most of the beginning is introductions. So welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you with us today for our first virtual Parent and Families Welcome Day. So this is actually the third session of 4 total. And you're our smallest session. So we had about like 50 families in each session on Tuesday. So it's nice to have a smaller group today. Typically, we're hosting all of you, usually about at least 300 people in a large room in the Williams Village Center, providing you with breakfast and socializing in person. So as we know, this year looks a lot different. And though I'm sad we can't meet with you in person, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to just be able to connect with you remotely and to provide some deeper insight into our program and what your students will be experiencing this first academic year. So we'll just do some introductions. Hopefully you know us pretty well by now. Maybe you were in our sessions back in like April where we were doing Admitted Students Day online. And I'm sure you've had a chance to connect with at least Heather by now for academic advising. So my name is Vanessa Napier and I oversee programs for students at CU that are trying to gain admission into the business school. As you can see, my physical office is actually in Williams Village North because my kind of main program is the Leeds pre-business program. And this is where the majority of our pre-business students live. So this year, we won't be full-time in person, but we are, of course, full-time remote. And your students will have opportunities to meet us in person because we'll be coordinating shifts throughout the semester. So I'll let Heather go ahead and introduce herself.
Hello, I know that quite a few of you already know me or we have chatted or emailed, but I'm the academic advisor for the pre-business program. I get a lot of help from both Stephen and Vanessa with advising, and also I manage our peer advisors who are juniors and seniors who have gone through the pre-business program successfully and made it into Leeds. So they're experts at answering questions like, what are good electives to take? How can I get involved on campus? What are different resources to help me in classes? Things like that. So I've got a lot of help to support your students, but my primary role is making sure they are on track to admit into Leeds. And then I also graduated from Leeds a couple of years ago. It looks very different than it did when I was in school, but I do have that experience as a student within Leeds, so I'm familiar with some things from that perspective as well.
Hi, everybody. I am Stephen Heyman, Program Manager for the Pre-Business Program. So my principal role is professional and community-based programming for our pre-business students. Professional programming will encompass exposing your student to all the different areas of emphasis in Leeds. And we'll touch a little bit more on that in a few minutes. And also community programming, just helping your students find new friends, new sense of community in this new space that they're entering, and hopefully develop a tight bond with our cohort. A lot of our students end up becoming colleagues in the future after business school. So. And this year we are positioned we're more interestingly positioned with Leeds. We have a lot of, if not all of the students living in Williams Village North will be business students. Half will be Leeds, half will be pre-business. So our students will now have the opportunity to get more closely acquainted with Leeds students as well. So really looking forward to this year, and we'll touch a little bit more on details of programming in a little bit.
Before we get started in the bulk of our presentation, I do want to talk about some hot topics. And so it's kind of nice that you are the third session because we've gotten through a lot of those really like burning questions really around COVID and how we are operating our move-in procedures and that kind of thing. So I'll spend probably about 10 minutes here. It's a lot to go through. And then this may generate some questions for you as well. The point of me doing this is that I really only want this to be a portion of the presentation because I am really excited to talk to you about our program, what your students are going to be doing this year, because regardless of changes that may be happening that are COVID related, the program and your students' classes aren't going to change. We're still going to be here no matter what, all academic year. So I'll talk a little bit about that. The most comprehensive guide for your common questions is the roadmap that CU Boulder has on our website. When you ask me questions, that is what I'm referring to. It is live, it's updated regularly. It just went through another kind of more structural update, so it's easier to navigate. And so the portion that you really want to focus on is this main landing page, as well as the section for undergraduate students. So we want to be, kind of focused in the undergraduate portion because that's who your students are. And it has the most relevant information for new students moving on to campus. So one example of a common question I'm being asked is, what about dining? We're paying for this meal plan. Are my students really going to be able to, get access to the dining halls? And that's absolutely, students will have grab and go options, which is always a thing every year. So grab and go is really popular, as well as they're going to be able to order ahead for their meals. So that is the structure of the dining hall right now. The other thing I'm asked a lot about is COVID test questions and the Thanksgiving break portion. So the fact that students aren't returning after Thanksgiving break. All of those questions can be answered in this roadmap. One big, topic is about billing. Am I paying for housing and dining after Thanksgiving break? No, you're not. And so that is a great question to get answered through the roadmap. Your housing and dining is prorated for the first day of classes through Thanksgiving break. So I know it's a lot to sort through, but it's really helpful. And again, that is what I'm referring to as you're asking me those questions. CU does such a great job about being transparent from the faculty, staff, admin, students, and parents side. So we're not getting information before you are. It's all coming to this website, and if it's a major update, we are getting emailed about it, and we're disseminating that information quickly. Another big topic on this roadmap is going to be health and safety. As you're aware, there are those COVID testing requirements. Be sure that you're looking at those and getting the right test in the right time frame. One common question was, well, can we just wait to get to see you? And you absolutely can, but it could delay your move-in process. So be sure to reference that website and make sure that you are up to date on those kinds of information. You can read more on the health and safety there, but just so you know what we're doing in the dorm specifically, because even if your student isn't living in Williams Village North, maybe they are living off campus because housing was more limited, they're still having classes there, like their math class. And so we've increased the time that students have to change classes to at least 20 minutes. They are implementing social distancing in the classroom, so there is somewhat of a rotation schedule. Each instructor is managing that individually. And we always have on-site janitorial staff, and they do an incredible job keeping this building clean with 500 18-year-olds. But this year, they'll really even be more focused on sanitization of the spaces, especially with the bathrooms, study rooms, classrooms, and lounge areas. So all good information you can reference on the housing and dining portion of the roadmap. So you have an orientation, and like I mentioned earlier, it is typically in person the day after move-in, but we wanted to provide it to you earlier since it gives an opportunity for you to engage with us and ask questions. And your students usually have an in-person orientation as well. This year, it will be an online course module, and it'll start opening on Friday through Pathway to Leeds. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. For the in-person component, your student's hall director and RA staff will be doing the majority of the in-person style orientation during your move-in. So that's when you're going to meet the hall director, most likely. She'll be busy and running around, but I'm sure you'll get a glimpse of her, get an opportunity to meet her, as well as the RA staff, which are living on each floor with your students and managing a group of students. So I know there are a lot of concerns about online learning. That is one of the really hot topics for this time of year. So just so you know, online instruction, especially at the collegiate level, it isn't new. It's really common. Our online classes are really robust, and students actually find them really accessible and typically do very well in the courses. So there's a difference between being fully online and being a remote or hybrid course. The online classes are going to be something like they don't have a specific meeting time. There is coursework and maybe lectures that are pre-recorded, and all of their coursework for the week may be due on something like a Sunday evening. For the remote and hybrid courses, if a time and day is listed, then that means they're expected to be in front of a computer and be live for that time and day. And the instructor is providing a live lecture component. So really critical that students are engaging in those, remote and hybrid courses as much as their online classes. So this kind of provides high levels of interaction and engagement in an online platform. It is something we have done in the past as well, and we've done it all summer. So instructors are really familiar with this technology and how to teach effectively in this space. Heather and I also had to transition from in-person to online teaching in the spring, and we really found that our students were really engaged. They did really well in the class. So we're excited to just kind of see how this transition to fall works out with us being so well prepared for the online and remote space of learning. So the most important thing I tell students every semester, I'm sure some of you have heard this from me, is that when a parent or student asks me, what's the one thing I can do this semester to be successful, I always say go to class. And I know that feels like, well, duh, I'm gonna go. But it's actually one of the hardest things they face in the semester is, do I really need to go? And I kind of know what they're gonna talk about this time, and maybe I'll just get the notes from a friend. But it's so critical that even if it's online, even if it's remote, or if it's in person, like their math class, it's so critical that they go, they're engaged, and they're attending. They are only in classes for 12 to 15 hours a week. The credit hours we talk about, that is actually a physical hour of class. And so it's just really important that they think that those 12 to 15 hours, they're investing in their education. So that is something we as a team really try to help them do too. We often hear from instructors that maybe a student's not attending, or if they're not showing up to our classes in the fall, we think, if they're not showing up to our class, they may not be showing up to other classes. And we know through some really good data and experience that our students that do well in classes and in the program are the students that are going to class. Heather will talk a little bit more about ways you can help support your student later in the presentation. So move-in, I keep getting this question too. I know we're just a week away. We are really committed to the move-in process. Everything is moving in that direction. But if at some point circumstances dictate that we can't continue to provide in-person classes, like I mentioned earlier, everything simply transitions to the remote space. Their classes aren't going to change. They're not going to be canceled. They're not going to even change instructors. Everything just goes from that time in person to being that time online. If that happens and we transition to fully remote learning, that would bring up a conversation about their housing. But just so you know, like even in the spring, no one was required to move out. So if you have an out-of-state student, they're not going to be suddenly kicked out of their dorm. That is not how that process works. So they will be able to stay if they need to. That's typically how it's worked in the past. And we had many students stay on campus after March and through the summer. So that still could be an option for your student. We're going to try to limit disruption as much as possible. So the spring transition was really sudden and there were a lot of moving pieces, but overall it went really well. Like I mentioned, all of our students just continued their classes online. They were actually really successful in that space. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but that's why we're here. That's why we're a team and we keep our staff to student ratio small. So there's 3 of us for 250 of them. We consider that a really excellent ratio of faculty, staff to student. And we, like I mentioned, have prepared all summer for these contingency plans, and we have implementation teams ready to go as things change. So I mentioned a little bit about Thanksgiving. Students will not return to campus after Thanksgiving break, and all of those classes will be remote. they should feel really comfortable with this by that point in the semester. It should be a really smooth transition. They're going to have a lot of support to help them feel successful. Instructors are still making decisions about like finals and how those will look remotely, or maybe they will be adjusted to be in person before they leave. So there'll be some flexibility with that. And then they leave for the Thanksgiving break. They don't come back until the campus returns in January. So the last day of the semester is December 14th. Your student may end a little earlier depending on their final schedule, but then I think they return in January. So I hope that I've answered some kind of the burning questions here, and please throw your questions in the chat and we will be sure to address those. But now, we really want to focus on what this program means, what it is, what it does for your students. So this program was born from a need. Our college, the Leeds School of Business, has become increasingly competitive over the past decade. And we have to turn away really talented students. So as we struggled to manage enrollment, we really wanted to provide a structured way to capture students that did not end up admitted directly into Leeds, but still showed academic and professional promise. So class of 2024 is our 6th year of pre-business students. I can't believe that we're in our 6th year. And the point of this program is to help them be successful on their path to Leeds. We're also here if they decide that Leeds is not right for them. So we're here to help them wayfind or navigate the first year of college. It's a big transition and they deserve a lot of support to help them find their way. Even some students after the first year may be unsure, but they have a great foundation to know how to prototype and test experiences that will help them make informed decisions. So this is, somewhat of a live-in community where we try to offer their classes in their dorm. So all of those, required classes except for econ are going to be hosted more centrally, so they can, walk downstairs in their pajamas and be sure to go to class. It helps set them up for success with that attendance that I talked about earlier. There are GPA and grade expectations. Heather will talk a little bit about what those are exactly later in the presentation. This also allows us to host community and professional events, and Stephen will really go into detail in that next. We have mentorship programs, and there's guaranteed space within Leeds if the requirements are met. I mentioned it's a really competitive school to get into, so this just guarantees that if they're meeting requirements, they will be able to join us their sophomore year. It's only a 1-year program, so after 1 year, if they're unsure or they're still exploring or they didn't quite meet the requirements, they can still get into Leeds. They will still have opportunities that we as Leeds team members will support them on, but they no longer have to, be in the program and meet the same kind of community and professional event requirements. Most of our students get in after 2 semesters, so they are joining Leeds fall of 2021 for this class. Some of them need summer semester to retake classes, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. This program also guarantees that your student will be on track for a 4-year graduation if they're meeting all of the requirements. So their first year looks almost identical to a traditional Leeds freshman. As Stephen mentioned, they're even living in a dorm with the majority of freshman business students. So it's like half and half pre-business, half business this year. So we find that that's really important from like a cost standpoint for parents and students. We really want to keep them on track for that 4-year graduation. So that's a little bit about our program, and I'm going to turn it over to Stephen so he can talk a little bit more about what programming looks like for our students.
Thank you, Vanessa. So before I jump into programming specifics, I do want to address a couple of questions from Alex. First is, how will orientation be handled for those who live off campus? So orientation is actually going to be the same experience for all of our students this year. It's going to be online and asynchronous, meaning the student will have the opportunity to approach this orientation in chunks if they want to, or just get it all done in one night. The programming launches tomorrow evening, and it will run through next week until Friday. So your student will have plenty of time to take this orientation on our learning management system, which is called Canvas. So I'm sure most of you have heard this name before, but Canvas, our learning management system, hosts all of our classes, which kind of brings me into your next question here, Alex, which is how to attend will students receive their instructions on how to attend their online or hybrid classes? So all of the classes your student will be taking will be hosted via Canvas. Each instructor will most likely have a slightly different approach to what online or hybrid learning looks like, although we've all been attending the same types of trainings. So I can tell you we're all using Zoom, so your student will be obviously very well versed in Zoom by the time this semester is done. But beyond that, the tools for teaching and learning might differ slightly from course to course depending on the instructor's guidance. So my advice is to your student is to make sure they go on Canvas and read the syllabus and guidelines for each individual class that they're taking so that they can be prepared for whatever tools will be needed for that particular course. If anything I said is offbeat, please cut in and and correct me, Vanessa and Heather. But that seems to be that's kind of the situation as it stands right now. So back to programming. So as I said before, one of my principal roles is developing and hosting professional events for the students. And in the fall, this would include skill building workshops that I custom build for our students, such as professional communications, organization and time management, resume building, and one of my favorite courses, which is neurohacking, which is kind of a self-awareness course on device and phone usage. I also host talks with career professionals, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and Leeds alumni who all share their industry experience, tips, and best practices with our students. Students will have the opportunity to expose themselves to all of the areas of emphasis in Leeds. This includes management and entrepreneurship, marketing, finance, accounting, and real estate. And I can't tell you how many times I have students come up to me after a professional program and say, I never thought I'd be interested in something like real estate. And it really does pay off for your student to try to attend as many of these programming events as possible. We do require that they attend at least 2 during their first freshman year, so 1 per semester, which is a pretty small ask. So, and also now we'll turn over to kind of a community programming. Fostering a sense of community within our cohort is incredibly important to us and to our students' resiliency and academic success. It's going to look a little bit different this year because obviously students can't congregate in large numbers, a maximum of 10 per group as it stands right now. So we're under strict limitations, but we're working with Williams Village North Hall Director, and we're going to ensure your students have opportunity to socialize, network, and form new friendships. Now, this is going to look a little bit different than a mass orientation like we typically do with our students, where everybody gets into large groups to get to know each other. So we're going to be doing this on more of a micro level where students will have more opportunities to engage in one-on-one interactions. And I also want to point out that in our first course in the fall, Designing Your Leads, that Vanessa and Heather and I all teach together, there will be ample opportunities for the students to congregate and connect with each other as we mix them up into different breakout rooms throughout each class session. So, and in real life, it would be the same exact thing. We have name tags, and we literally don't let the students sit in the same place the entire first semester because we want them to be exposed to the entire cohort and get to know each other. So that will be happening in class as well as outside of class in the halls. So that brings me to back to Canvas. Pathway to Leeds is one of our custom courses that we've built in Canvas, and you'll probably hear your student talk about this frequently. Pathway to Leeds is a course that it's not a class, but it's actually just a transparent way for your student to view their progress through the pre-business program on their way to matriculation into Leeds. But it's also holding all of the critical program information. It's located on Pathway to Leeds. It's kind of our central hub for pre-business now. Academic advising, event information, and weekly newsletters. All of those will be published through Pathway to Leeds. So if your student has questions, that's the first place they should land, is go to Pathway to Leeds and make sure the answers are there first before they would even need to reach out to us. So your student will be able to track their progress, as I said, and we basically tick off their required coursework as they complete it through the fall, so they can see their progress towards Leeds, and also their progress in terms of their attendance to professional programming. So once they meet their programming requirement, that will be checked off, and they'll be good to go. So I'll let Heather touch a little bit more on academic advising and the importance of Pathway to Leeds on campus.
Yeah, so there's a handful of questions here that are coming through that I want to make sure we touch on that are relevant to this. So yes, Vanessa just posted the link to Pathway to Leeds to her comment there. Your student is the one that has to log in. They have access to it. It's designed to guide them and encourage them to kind of take ownership over the process. So I saw a question earlier come in about my student didn't speak with an advisor before they scheduled for the fall. That's perfectly fine. We give them a lot of help in their first semester. We pre-registered them, and then Pathway to Leeds is kind of that tool to guide them. So there's a chance that they could have done that perfectly successfully. We actually have gone through and checked all of the student schedules and have reached out to students who had any issues in their schedules. So if for whatever reason they didn't register correctly, they would hear from us, if not already by the end of the day today. So on that note, in the bigger picture, we're using Pathway as a tool to give them a lot of information about our program and about academic advising. I lean on it a lot because we have a whole team of people helping. And of course, I am the academic advisor for the pre-business program. I saw that was a question earlier. But I get a lot of support from our team, which is why we use a generic advisor. So in this first year, they're working with all of us. They're in our program. We're helping them admit into Leeds. They admit after their first year and enter into Leeds on track as a traditional sophomore. They'll be advised by a business advisor at that point. We switch them over to someone who's a specialist in whatever area they're most passionate about. And then in their junior and senior year, we transition to really thinking about what a student needs to do in order to successfully get a job at the end of their 4 years and complete all of the things they wanted to do while they're here. So they're working with that specialized advisor, but they're also leaning on our career team. Our academic advising team works very closely with an office called Career Strategy, so they'll have a career advisor and an academic advisor, and we work very much hand in hand to kind of guide them through their junior and senior year, right? So you can see in their senior year, they're checking in with their academic advisor, they're working with career, all working toward, of course, whatever comes after their 4 years, whether it's getting a job or pursuing a graduate program. So we're kind of supporting them throughout their 4 years in a variety of ways, but they really have contact with their academic advisor, particularly in their first 2 years. We require it every semester. So they will kind of be forced to have a connection with us, to build a relationship with us, and to successfully register throughout those years. Aside from advising, which is obviously listed on this slide, there are a lot of resources for your student to be successful. This transition into their first year can be a challenging one. They're taking very rigorous courses. As a program, we want to make sure that we're providing everything they need in order to be successful. So there are tutoring options specific to pre-business. We have an awesome tutor, Morgan, who's going to help us out here in the fall. She did very well in her first year. And is qualified to tutor in both math classes, so statistics and math analysis, in both econ courses, micro and macro, as well as World of Business, which your student will take in the spring. So she's a great resource, and she's specific to our program. Students will have access to her throughout the semester. And she's usually a little bit more accessible, in my opinion, than tutoring on main campus, because she has additional walk-in hours and things like that. We're still finalizing her times for the fall. as soon as we have them, we'll post them on Pathway to Leeds for your student to access. Then, of course, there's professor office hours. All professors are required to have office hours for their courses, so your student will be able to attend those, and I highly encourage them to. It's a great opportunity for them to get to know their professor, build a relationship, but also figure out how they're doing in the class and ask any questions they may have. I just saw the question about tutoring. They don't necessarily need to set it up now. They can set it up at any time. Our tutoring offered through the pre-business program is done usually on walk-ins, so they can go without any pre-registration. ASAP tutoring, which I'll touch on here in a moment, does require pre-registration, but again, they can do it at any time. I would highly encourage them to be proactive. The sooner the better, particularly with that math class, Math 11, 12, or Math Analysis in Business. That one can kind of sneak up on students. So they have advising as a resource, of course. We have peer advisors, who are those students who have successfully made it through the program, who can help with advising questions. They help me manage that email account, so your student may have already connected with a peer advisor without even realizing it. And then the mentoring program. Your students have access to the peer-to-peer mentoring in their first year. They are matched with someone who's successfully made it through the pre-business program and into Leeds, and is a junior or a senior. So they can kind of give them some big picture guidance on how to be successful. It's not a tutor, it's a mentor. But I highly suggest it for all of your students. They should have an email offering this program to them in their CU email. They should have received it over the summer. And it's not too late to sign up for that. And then, of course, they have access to all of the main campus opportunities. So ASAP tutoring is the main campus tutoring option. They typically do group tutoring, and you have to register in advance, and they meet at a consistent time every week. So it's kind of like an appointment to be kept, which I think is great because it helps students stay on track and they take attendance, so it keeps them accountable. But of course, it's a little bit less flexible than our walk-in, so we offer through the pre-business program. And then counseling. There are, of course, a variety of counseling opportunities on campus for your student if they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. It's a big transition. This year is particularly challenging, of course, and there are naturally some mental health concerns that come with some of the social distancing that we are managing this year. So please encourage them to take advantage of the resources that are available to all students. We can, of course, connect them to those resources, and they're always listed on Pathway to Leeds as well. So this is an overview of the Leeds degree requirements, so you have some idea what your student's going through in the next 4 years. The gold is all the business requirements, and the silver are all the non-business requirements. So you can see the darkest gold is the business core, 30 credit hours. That's going to be really taken in their first 2 years. That's what they're focusing on this first year, and that's what they'll be focusing on in their sophomore year. It all is about giving them an idea of all the different all the different aspects of business that they could potentially pursue. And then in their junior and senior year, that's when they're going to dive into their area of emphasis: marketing, finance, accounting, management, real estate, and their business electives, which could be another area of emphasis, certificates, etc. And then in that non-business portion of their degree, that's where CU has kind of given a liberal arts flavor to their degree. The general education credits are designed to give students kind of a liberal arts component. And then the non-business electives are anything outside of the business school. So very flexible. They're giving students the opportunity to pursue a minor or a business or a certificate outside of business, as well as study abroad if that's something they want to do down the road. As you can see, it's almost half their degree. So the big takeaway here is they're going to be taking business classes. There are absolutely requirements that need to be met, but they're also sprinkling in electives every semester. So they should expect to have some electives that could be totally different from their business classes, and that's okay. We want them to have a variety of perspectives by the time they graduate here from CU. Okay, These are the requirements for admission. So all students are required to get a B- or better in 4 courses: microeconomics, macroeconomics, and then 2 math classes: math analysis and business and statistics. We also require a 3.0 or higher cumulative GPA. So this includes every class that's taken at CU, including electives. So if you're very familiar with GPAs, you may note that a B- would actually line up with a 2.7. So if students are getting B- in those required courses, that's okay, but they need to do better in their electives to keep that GPA high. And if your student is, was enrolled in some kind of dual enrollment courses in high school, or has chosen to take classes over the summer at a community college or something like that, I know that was particularly popular this year, just know that if they weren't taken through the CU system, they're not going to impact the student's GPA. However, of course, if they were taken elsewhere, we're still looking for that B- requirement if they took a required course. If they were taken through the CU system, they will impact the student's CU GPA. I know there's a handful of programs that go through CU Denver that could potentially impact their CU GPA, hopefully in a positive way. All right. This is an example of some freshman courses. There are a few things here that will be consistent for your student regardless, and then a few things that may vary. So microeconomics is on most students' schedule for the fall. It should be, unless they have transfer credit for it. This is a prerequisite for macro, so they need to be taking it in the fall, again, if they don't have transfer credit for it. Then a math class. It could be math 11, 12, and this math analysis course, or statistics. Either is fine. Whichever they don't take in the fall, they'll take in the spring. There's no benefit to taking one first or second. Then writing 1150 is listed here. We have it listed here because it is a requirement for graduation, not a requirement for admission into Leeds. And it's a first-year writing course. So it's ideal if a student takes it in their first year. So we push it for that fall semester, but I know that those courses filled up quickly. So if they didn't get into it, don't worry. Any other elective in that place is perfectly fine. They can take it in the spring. I also see quite a few students who have transfer credit for that course. Then they have this BADM 1250 first year seminar, or Design Your Leads. We're going to talk a lot more about that class here in a little bit. And then one more gen ed course, or general education course. In other words, adding an elective. They should be between 12 and 15 credit hours. This gen ed course may not exist on their schedule if they're aiming for a lower number of credit hours, and that's perfectly fine. As long as they're between 12 and 16, they're okay. We tend to encourage students to err on the lower side of that, just because, again, fall is challenging. It's rigorous. It's a big transition. And then in the spring, they'll take World of Business. This is only available to pre-business students in the spring, so they will need to wait to take that course. Whichever math class they have not yet taken. Macroeconomics, again, some students have credit for that. That's fine. They'll just replace it with an elective. There may be an option for this first-year global experience. It's an international business course for freshmen. We'll send out more information about that if that is an option for them and what that looks like a little bit later on in the semester. So they'll know what that looks like. If it's not an option for them, they'll replace it with an elective, and that's perfectly fine. It's an optional course. And then again, another gen ed course aiming for the 12 to 15 range. All right. So for some perspective for you as your student goes through this process, students are pre-business or designated pre-business for their first year, so fall and spring semester. They receive an application link to apply for Leeds in the spring. They can fill it out at any time. However, we have to wait to review them until we get their final grades at the end of the term. So know that they'll be admitted after their final grades post, and we review everyone usually around June 15th, sometimes earlier. We have them register for general education courses during April registration for the fall, so that they have a variety of electives to choose from and to fill in with their business courses once they can enroll in them. They'll be able to add those business classes once they admit in the summer. And then, like I mentioned earlier, they're given a business advisor at that time and they make the transition. So I want to take a moment and talk about some of the, I see a quick question there about the 30 credit hours to admit into Leeds. Not necessarily a requirement. It's perfectly fine if they want to take 12 credit hours both semesters. Just know that, 120 credit hours is required to graduate. It's an average of 15, so if they're taking lighter than that, they may need to make up credits later on. Or if they transfer credit, it may already be making up those credits. But no, we don't have a credit hour requirement for admission. So I want to take a minute and run through a handful of slides. I know that you all are a very significant support for your student in their first year and throughout college. And I know that this year in particular is unusual, and your student may be leaning on you even more than they have in the past, or even more than they had originally planned to for this first year. So I want to kind of walk through a few things that I often hear in my office that you may hear as a parent, to help guide them and encourage them in the right direction. So one of the things I often hear from students, and that you may hear this fall, is I have no idea how well I'm doing in a class. I know that this is very different from high school. There are many high schools that give grade reports every day at 8 a.m. or once a week or whatever. That's unfortunately not the case in college. Every professor is different. They kind of get to make somewhat of their own rule books, so they'll have different ways that they post grades, and of course every syllabus looks a little bit different, so the components of their grade will vary. But it is very important that you encourage your student to reach out to their professor and communicate with them. They can absolutely attend office hours and ask about what their grades are, how they're doing so far, how that compares to the class overall, and what their projected grade might be if they continued on the path that they're on. The sooner the better. It's great for them to know early on and get that feedback so that they can make changes as needed. The big thing to note here is that as academic advisors, we don't see final grades until the end of the semester. So a student may come into my office and ask me if I can look at their grades for them, and unfortunately I don't have the ability to do that. We get some grade updates with math. We use that information to do interventions with students who are falling behind early on in the semester. But aside from that, we don't get any grade information. So very important they reach out directly to their professor. Vanessa mentioned this one earlier. I often hear, I don't go to class because it's not required. I know that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this looked really different. Attendance was not a component of students' grades, so you could attend or not attend based on how comfortable you felt with the material. That's not really true anymore. Classes do have a participation component to their grade in almost every case. And sometimes it's a very significant portion of their grade. So if they're seeing on their schedule a designated day and time, whether it's via Zoom or in person, they need to be attending. It's really an appointment to be kept. So please encourage them to always go. I know econ's a great example of this. The recitation feels like this weird add-on to the class, but it's actually very critical and really their opportunity to engage with the professor, ask questions. It's the hands-on portion of the course, and it can be up to the participation and attendance in that class can be up to 20% of their final grade. And I've had students come to me at the end of the semester and say, oh, I didn't know that I needed to be going. Well, that's a serious problem, right? So please, please, please encourage them to look at their class schedule and make sure they're attending their courses regularly. Particularly this year, we're seeing a lot of transfer credit. History, this is one thing that I've heard, history or any other course is the same everywhere. I'll take it at a community college this summer, or perhaps you've already taken it at a community college. If students are hoping to transfer credit, please encourage them to just connect with me first. I have seen scenarios, this year's been very good, but generally speaking, I've seen scenarios in which students have taken classes elsewhere, thought they would transfer, and then they didn't meet the requirements. So if they reach out to me, we use a website called transferology.com. It's got lots of data in there, but there's a couple of check boxes they need to go through just to make sure everything is good to go before they take classes elsewhere. I was pre-registered for the fall term, so I don't need to worry about my class schedule. So there's a couple of really important pieces of information about this particular statement. First of all, it's true, they were pre-registered for some classes for their fall term, but not all. Every student needed to add at least one course. So very, very important that they took the time to add a class to their schedule. Like I mentioned earlier, we did complete schedule checks. So students will or should have or will hear today about the status of their schedule if there's an issue. If you don't hear from us, that's a good thing. The other component to this that's important to note is that we don't pre-register for spring semester or future semesters past that. So we're kind of guiding them through this first semester, but beyond that, they are going to be responsible for making sure they're taking the required courses. Of course, we require advising every semester, so our students will be working with us, they'll be talking with us and have guidance on how to do this. They're not going to be in the dark by any stretch, but they will need to make sure that they're adding all of those classes in the future. On that note, I saw a question about holds earlier, and I wanted to include that in this particular slide. We do use holds in the fall and spring terms of both their freshman and sophomore year to ensure that they're talking with an academic advisor and making sure that they're on track. In the fall, we cover this content in the Design Your Leeds course, so they'll get that through that class and have that hold removed once they've attended the class that covers it. I know that there was a hold put on this summer that was designed to help students not drop their required classes or their pre-registered classes. We did all this work for cohorting. We were trying to keep students in their cohorts. It should not restrict them from registration. It just restricts them from dropping a class. So if a student needs to swap a class, they just have to email me. Okay. And then I believe this is the final one. I'm so busy, can you just call my advisor for me? I often hear this, especially as we get near midterms and finals. This is totally fine over the summer. I know this was a regular occurrence, and I get it. This year was very unusual. However, we're going to be facing some barriers here in the fall term. There's a federal law that protects student privacy that prevents myself or our other staff members from giving out student information to people besides the student, and that unfortunately does include parents. There's a thing called a FERPA release that your student can fill out on their Buff portal that will give you the option to be able to get information from us. So if that's a very important thing to you, please encourage them to fill that out. But do know that once the school year starts, it kicks in on the first day of classes. Once the school year starts, I'm not going to be able to answer as many detailed and personalized questions. Of course, broad questions about the overall structure of the program, things like that are still, as long as it's not related to private student information. Oh, and this is the last one. I can't get in to see my advisor. And some of you have already experienced this over the summer. During peak times, I get really busy. I have a lot of help, but unfortunately, there's some limit to my bandwidth. So I really encourage students to be proactive. We're going to give out information about how to register long before they actually get around to registering. So they should have the resources they need to start looking at classes and building out their shopping cart and figuring out what their next steps are. And I highly encourage them, if they really want to meet with me before they register, to do so long in advance. We've got walk-in hours every week on Mondays. There's a typo on the slide from 1 to 3. We may be opening some additional walk-in hours with peer advisors. They're still finalizing their hours for the fall. And then, of course, I have appointments most days of the week. So lots of options for them to get in, but best if they can be proactive and avoid those peak times if they can help it. So just so you're aware, there's a couple of important deadlines that are coming up for your student. The last day to add a course is September 2nd, and the last day to drop a course without a W is September 9th. So you'll notice, I'll explain what a W here is in just a moment, but you'll notice that the add deadline is before the drop deadline. So if a student is intending to drop a class and wants to replace it, they need to do that before the 2nd. If they just want to drop a class, that's okay, they have until the 9th. Past that, they can withdraw from a single course with a W. A W stands for withdrawn. It will be on their transcript, but it does not impact their GPA. So it won't necessarily impact their admission or anything like that. We definitely suggest it for students who find themselves in a tough spot and aren't going to be able to recover a grade, those kinds of things. But better if they just want to drop it for whatever reason, better for them to do that earlier in the semester prior to that deadline. And then please encourage them to check their CU email. Stephen mentioned this earlier, but we send out our newsletters. There's information about Canvas and all of these things. Their professors will reach out to them through their email. So all of that goes there. Please encourage them to check it. And I saw the question there about registration for the spring. It occurs in November. The course catalog for the spring will be released usually in mid-October. So we start discussing it in class around then. So they've got lots of time to build up those shopping carts and think about what they want to be taking. So your student will have access to me as an advisor through appointments and walk-ins. Appointments are longer meetings. They're usually a half hour. We do exploration, we can do planning, we can talk about class issues and concerns, resources, anything like that. Walk-ins or drop-ins via Zoom are a little bit, they're shorter appointments. So we usually try to keep them to 15 minutes or less. Great for class changes if a student needs to add, drop, or swap a class. I mentioned those advising holds that we'll use in the fall and spring. Those do not come off through walk-ins. They need to be attending class or doing some kind of appointment, those kinds of things. That being said, again, the hold that was put on over the summer does not need to come off. That isn't going to restrict their registration. Again, it just restricts them from dropping the course. So we're going to shift gears a little bit here and talk about the first year seminar in business, or Design Your Leads. It's got a couple of names. I apologize for the confusion. This course is designed as an opportunity to build relationships. Stephen mentioned this earlier when we talked about community building, but one of our missions is to help students create a strong community around them, whether they're in person or remote, so that they can have a support system. And you know, there's lots of research that shows the more they make friends, the more likely they are to form study groups, and the more they have study groups, the better grades they get. So we want them to be academically successful, and creating a community is one way to do that. It's also an opportunity for self-structured discovery. We'll do personality assessments and have them try things and see what they like and don't like and reflect on that, as well as some soft skill building and design thinking, which is really the backbone of the course. I'm going to let Vanessa take the reins here and explain a little bit more about what that looks like.
Yeah, and along the same vein, since there's been a lot of questions about this, Heather, can you pull up Pathway to Leeds in Canvas?
Oh yeah, give me just one moment.
So what I'm going to have her do, she's been driving our presentation, is I'm going to just show you what we're talking about when we're talking about Pathway and Canvas. A lot of you have some concerns around, like, how are they going to know, what they're taking, these AP credit questions, when is registration? And so this Canvas structure that Stephen mentioned, like our learning management tool, is what all instructors are housing the foundation of their coursework in. Your students absolutely may have other programs that they're navigating in that instructors use, but Canvas is the class. And Pathway is not a course they have to complete for us. It is simply a tool, a module, a course, quote unquote, that they will have resources in. And so all of this type of information that you're asking in the chat is typically going to be housed here. So Heather, pulling up Pathway to Leeds, this is Canvas. And so that courses button on the left, as courses start being published by instructors, they will be getting emails to their CU Boulder email account saying, you have a new Canvas course. And when they click on that button, they'll be able to see all of the courses that they are enrolled in. It's really critical that they're checking that CU Boulder email account. to make sure that they have the most up-to-date information. If for some reason an instructor was using something else, they would be emailing the student. But for Pathway, all of our information is under that modules link to the left there.
Yeah, here, Vanessa, do you mind if I run through this real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I am on this page because I wanted to point out really quickly and mention a couple of important dates. We have gone ahead and put all the important dates off the registrar's calendar into the calendar on Pathway. So your student will have access to this. They can see if I were to click on this view course calendar. I'm not going to do it right now because my computer's running pretty slow, running Zoom and trying to pull up web pages, but there's an option here to kind of see all of these upcoming dates. And then to Vanessa's point, under modules, they have access to a whole variety of information, and we continually update this. So your students will see a big update as we get into the school year. But there's a frequently answered questions page with information about booking appointments and finding walk-ins, as well as a whole variety of other things. And then also information about registration. So for example, when I mentioned, it's perfectly fine if a student registered themselves over the summer, that may be because they ran through this and did their research, and that's awesome. They're reading what I put out, and I appreciate that. So this exists, as well as AP and IB transfer credits, information about what will and won't transfer. This page also has a handful of videos that walk students through how to run a degree audit, so you can see if the AP credit is going through here to see you and exactly what it counts for, as well as some popular courses, a four-year planning sheet, and how to get around campus. I know that was one question that came up earlier. This is a map and some information about how to navigate that. So lots of information in here. It's really designed to kind of be the backbone of our program and a central location for everything you might need to know, or your student might need to know, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we actually haven't been showing that in these presentations, but with a smaller group, it's a little easier to just show you quickly, not wanting to overwhelm you with information, but that is a great thing for you to sit down with your student and say, show me Pathway to Leeds. And if they're like, oh, I don't know what that is, that's a little bit of an alarm bell for us, right? Because we've been emailing and reminding and talking about it in our advising sessions. Like, Pathway is the navigation tool for them to be successful this year. It's such an important component. I'm about to talk about this Design Your Leeds class, BADM 1250. All of your students were pre-registered in this class. Our course module will also be in Canvas. So just like that Pathway to Leeds class, and that's where they're going to be looking at their homework and knowing their grade, so really important tools in Canvas for them. So let's see here. So talking a little bit about Design Your Leeds. This is a class that all business and pre-business students take. It's kind of one of the perks of the pre-business program. These used to be only a business class, but we found that it was really vital for our pre-business students to take it as well. I'm going to go through this very quickly and just give you like a really high level overview of the principles that we cover in Design Your Leeds. Leeds partners with Stanford's D School, their design school, and we weave design thinking throughout our curriculum. We believe that these principles are a way for students to approach life design and help them wayfind throughout the rest of their lives. So you'll see these hexagons here, and these hexagons are what the D School applies to product design. And when we're applying them to life design, they are certainly not this linear, but it's a great framework for how students can approach and wayfind their first year of college and beyond, all the way through their professional careers. This is framework that all of us as professionals at CU and Leeds use when we are approaching especially difficult problems. So I just wanted to show you kind of what this looks like. And we'll talk, just like I said, really high level overview. There's a lot of good information online that you can look at if you're really interested in this design thinking process. But we'll be relying on many of these skills and mindsets of designers. And this class will be heavily focused on prototyping and testing kind of all stages of the process involved. So on this next slide here, we'll talk about kind of the design thinking mindsets. And this is really the most, important dispositions that explain how designers think differently. So radical collaboration. This is a collaborative process, and many of the best ideas are going to come from other people. The radical part is that you really want a diverse team with different experiences, perspectives, point of views, and even beliefs. So helping students kind of get out of their comfort zone, get out of that like friend group, and really find other people that can support them on their path to help them answer questions. You'll hear us talk about reframing, especially to the students, a lot. Reframing is how designers get unstuck, and it enables us to examine ways to look at problems differently or through a new lens in order to increase the opportunity for innovation. Your students will get stuck at many intervals, especially this fall. Maybe it's with, they got their first bad grade and they're really just not sure how to move forward. Some of them stop going to class or, don't reach out to instructors. And that's what we're really here to do, is help them reframe the problem, look at the situation through a new lens, and support them on, being curious. So this curiosity component, it really invites exploration. It's an open approach to learning more. Designers look through the lens of curiosity, not judgment or rushing to a solution. So you'll hear a designer say, "Tell me more," or ask open questions to get at the needs and wants, what works, what doesn't, and what's missing. Being mindful of the process, really being aware of where you are. It informs the approach. Freshman year, it may not be the time to get that internship or, join every club. It's really the time to start prototyping and testing ideas, meeting others in network, and asking a lot of those curious questions. So it's really important to be aware of your own process. Are you rushing to a solution? Are you blocked? Are you energized by certain activities and drained by others? Being mindful of the process is the key to the journey of life design. Last thing is this bias towards action. This is really the heart of design thinking. You are committed to building your way forward. Designers try things, they test out ideas, they fail often until they find what works or what solves the problem. Designers really try to embrace change, and they're not attached to one particular outcome. And this is what I was talking about with, if your student decides that business maybe isn't right for them, we're here to help them continue to explore, to take those relevant classes, to engage in those co-curricular opportunities, to really help them make an informed decision versus just feeling stuck and unsure of how to move forward. So when we talk about, human-centered design, it is a process that starts with the people you're designing for, and it ends with new solutions that are tailor-made to suit their needs. We'll talk a lot about prototyping, especially experiences and engagements this year. And this is what makes ideas come to life so that they can learn from them quickly, iterate and involve the ideas to the greatest value. And that's why, Stephen is hosting all of these different types of professional and community events to encourage students to explore, like, what does being an accountant really look like? What is it like to really be in the field of marketing? Because what students often think of it as is this maybe Mad Men style, advertising life, but it's so different now. It's so data driven. And a lot of students find that they really fit into that marketing role, whereas they didn't think that that was a great path for them. So prototypes are just used to experiment and test elements of pathways that they may want to follow in order to create a path that is suited just for them. So we're going to do something a little fun here. It's all of this I'm doing right now is actually their first week of class in Design Your Leeds. So we're talking about all of these things, engagements, testing, getting stuck, who we are and how we support them. And we find that we really think of college in these kind of three archetypes. And there are kind of these three buckets that we find students are approaching college for. And we're gonna do a little poll system here. I'm gonna explain what these archetypes are, and then we're gonna engage with you, collect some data, because we're gonna compare your answers to your students in the first week of class. So these archetypes, I know you might be here for all three of them, right? And you don't have to choose just one way to approach college. But we really want you to think about picking kind of one of these as we move forward. So life of the mind, what is that? That is, you're coming to college to grow your intellect. You're in it for knowledge's sakes, and you came to really join the academy. This is a level 1 research institution, and you want to take all of those elective classes and all the minors and certificates, and you just really want to grow your mind, your knowledge base. Another way to approach college is career readiness. You came here to launch your career. You're a young entrepreneur, and you've already been running your own business at home. And you're interested in developing skills and amassing experiences that will position you for joining the workforce. That is your goal, career readiness. And then the last one we think of is, you are here to become you. You came to college to explore, to figure out who you are, what you like, and what matters to you. You really want to travel abroad. You want to join that sorority. You want to party on the hill. You really want to find different communities. And this is all about human expression. So we're going to throw up a poll here, and I want you to think about what you most identify with. Why would you go to college? Why did you go to college? Were you life of the mind and you were really just trying to soak up all that information? Were you going for a career? You knew what you wanted to study and you were going to amass those skills and that knowledge base? Or did you just want to go to explore, have fun? So this is from your point of view. You as a person, why would you go to college right now? Or why did you go to college? All right, so I think we've got most of you. We're just missing 2 of you, but that's okay. So we'll close this poll. We've got 2 more polls, so we're going through this pretty quickly. So the next poll that we're throwing up here is, why are you sending your students to college? What do you think your students should be focused on? This will be really good insight for us to just kind of see where your heads are at when you're thinking about sending your kid to college. What do you want them, to really embrace? Which archetype? So last poll. And, like I said, we're asking your students these same questions, so kind of cool. Where do you think Leeds thinks they should be? If you were talking to the dean right now, Dean Sharon Matusik, where do you think she would want your student to be? Where do you think she'd want your student to focus on? All right, we'll go ahead and wrap this poll up. So that's great. We got kind of 3 different polls there. So really interesting just to get your feedback there so that we can debrief with students in class. We'll be doing the same kind of polling with them in the classroom. They're kind of like running to different areas of the room where we have those pictures posted. And it's really funny to watch that, because sometimes you can see they're like, well, where's everyone going? Or what do you think my instructors want to see me do? But the whole takeaway here is that there is no one right way. There are so many different ways of going about college. And we want to be here to encourage your students to play with different hats. At Leeds, of course, we are focused on getting them career ready, but we believe that those other 2 archetypes help them get there as well. So really critical, components to the designing your life process, to think about these archetypes, think about how you can achieve these goals. And one thing we do in class, and what we'll do with them, is we'll say, we want each group of students in each archetype, because there's always going to be students in each one. That for the 4 years we've taught this, that's how it's been. They start coming up with engagements. What can you do this year to become career ready? Give us some engagements. So a common one is like, I'm going to get an internship But we really try to help them break out of that and explore unique opportunities. Well, what kind of internship? Who should you talk to first to really get insight on what kind of internship you're going to go for? So we are a great starting point, like a launch pad to help them achieve some of these goals and these archetypes and ways to approach them. By the end of this class, we usually have them come up with anywhere from like 50 to 60 different engagements that they can approach at CU and beyond. So really fun little segue into design thinking and how they can start prototyping those experiences. You know, and a big part of what we believe is that, you know, we don't just learn from the experience, we really learn from reflecting on that experience. What did it mean for you? How are you going to tell your story? How are you going to talk to that first major internship, those group of people that are going to be interviewing you about your college experience, about everything that you did to build that resume, build that LinkedIn profile? So reflecting on experience, being able to articulate your story is such a big part of what they learn in this Design Your Leads class. So, we wanted to do this to just, like I said, give you some insight into, what we're doing their first year. We're so excited. We get this new, fresh group of students every year, and we watch them grow and transform, really into adults and navigating being away from home probably for the first time and what that looks like and how to embrace their college experience. So, like I mentioned earlier, no matter what happens, we're committed to moving them in, but if there are any shifts and change for their, remote learning, we're here to support them all year. After Thanksgiving break, we're still here. They're still taking classes with us. They're still doing academic advising. So nothing like that's going to change, and they'll be engaging with us just like you are now. So really excited to meet everyone and get them in our Design Your Leads class. It's probably, one of the highlights of our semester. It's the best way for us to get to know them. It's also a touch point weekly. We're having a weekly meeting with your student the whole semester, and it's an early intervention tool. So if there is actually an attendance requirement for our class, they can only miss 2 classes. But even if they're missing one, we're reaching out. We're like, what's going on? You okay? Are you not feeling well? Why didn't you come to our class? Did you miss other classes? So we can get a little invasive there with, just making sure they're engaging, that we're paying attention, and we are here to help them succeed. You are sending them to college ultimately for their personal and academic success, and we are such a big component of that. So this weekly touch point, not only are we getting to engage with them and teach them some new styles of learning, new ways to approach problems, but great intervention tool for us to make sure that they're on track. Through this class, we create learning communities with their econ class, with their math class, and we actually do get some feedback on grades. And so we're able to intervene early if we are seeing any issues arise and start communicating with your student about how to move forward and get unstuck. So great tool, great way for you to, kind of ask questions about what's going on in Design Your Leads. Tell me a little bit about what you're learning. And hopefully by Thanksgiving break, they have a great story for you about their first semester at college and what that looks like for them. We actually do work on that specific language. Like, what are you going to tell your parents about your first semester at college when you go home for Thanksgiving break? Are you going to be like, oh, nothing, I don't know, I don't want to talk about it? Or are you going to have like a pitch deck, a 1.5 minute, this is what I've been doing, and be able to articulate that well? So it's definitely a goal for us. So we're actually, right on time, which is awesome for us. And we have some great questions to wrap up. So if you're thinking of anything else, this is the time. We have, a few more minutes here to answer some of your questions. So this is a common one. How many students are enrolled as pre-business this fall? So we have 250 students in our program. Traditionally, we have about 300, but we did decide this year to go a little smaller so that we can just provide, a more high-level experience, a better staff to student ratio. So that's actually really great for us. This 250 to 3 staff really is kind of unprecedented at CU. So really great, small, intimate program, for them to really get the support that they need. All right, so I think Stephen, provided quite a few links in this chat section, so be sure you save those, and especially that pathway class. I can't express that enough. I mean, maybe we've said it like 100 times, but after this meeting or sometime this weekend, try to get 5 minutes with your student and just say, show me pathway, show me what this is about. Let's see what other classes may be published by now. That would be unusual. That's going to happen usually the week before classes start. That's when you'll see Design Your Leads published. Some classes wait until the first day, so don't feel alarmed if you're not seeing them. The student can always reach out to their instructor. One common question we get is like, should we get our books now? So I think Heather might have touched on that a little bit, but you can go ahead and go through the bookstore. You can get that Design Your Life book. We're not supposed to say you can get it on Amazon, so I'm not going to say that, but it is there. You can get it through the bookstore as well. We had a question about, can I go to dinner with my student after move-in? You absolutely can. Your student's not on lockdown in the building or anything like that. They are moving in and out of their dorm and socializing in smaller groups. So that's what we're encouraging this year. And you absolutely can come and get your student and take them out to dinner. So don't worry about that. You may have some issues getting into the parking lot if another building is moving in. It could be really busy. So just coordinate a good meeting place with your student. They can always hop on the bus, or maybe they already have a bike and they can meet you at a restaurant on the hill or something like that. That would make it a little easier for you. But ultimately, they're spacing move out to where there's not going to be a ton of traffic. So maybe you can navigate that accordingly. Are kids going to socialize outside of Willville? Absolutely. They often mention that to us. Like, I so appreciate all this work you're doing on keeping our classroom small, but is it okay that I still go and meet my friends on main campus in Cheyenne, Arapahoe? Definitely, they're going to be able to meet and socialize. They're going to have classes with other students in their gen ed classes. So they're going to have a lot of opportunity to socialize and meet. And that's a big part of what we do too, is encouraging that community. They'll be doing a lot of it online, but they'll be able to meet in person and have study groups together, do tutoring in person. So lots of opportunities to engage there. Should there be a COVID outbreak in Willville, at what points will students be sent home? How many cases, etc.? So all of that's going to be on that roadmap to CU website about our quarantine dorms. So if there's an outbreak, students are moved to quarantine. It's not typically like a whole dorm building is going to get shut down. Obviously, there are some unknowns with that. But they will be, moved to quarantine as far as we're aware. And I mentioned earlier, no one was sent home. No one was forced away and they had to move. A lot of students actually did stay on campus in the spring. A lot of our students depend on us for housing. So that is always going to be an option. That's the message we're getting from our chancellor and our leadership. So it's not going to be sudden like that, to my knowledge. There will be quarantine situations. Willville's really nice in that it's very spacious, and there are a lot of opportunities to accommodate this quarantine situation. So we're hopeful that, it would be caught early. Contact tracing would be, deployed and then managed accordingly. So check out that roadmap and you'll be able to see what the plans are, because it's not straightforward. I don't think there's a specific number of cases that would need to present themselves. It's all about how, our implementation and contingency management teams would manage those situations dorm by dorm. Can students have visitors in dorm rooms from other dorms? So all the dorms require key access to get in, and they are staffed with a front desk. So I think that it will be limited in how students can engage in dorm rooms. They will really be engaging more in community spaces and outdoors until, it does get a little colder, which is typically, kind of around that Thanksgiving period when we experience more of our harsh weather systems, and that's when they'll be headed home. So it is probably unusual that they'll be visiting, from one dorm to another dorm room, since those spaces are pretty tight. We find that there's not a lot of hanging out in dorm rooms as much as there are those community spaces. So I think that we'll see that more this year as well. What percentage of the 250 are on campus versus off? We're still getting those numbers from housing, but it's pretty low. There's just a small percentage of our 250 that are living off campus. Some of that is because they joined maybe late in the semester, or they didn't put their housing deposit down before the priority deadline. So Heather, I think as far as I know, there may just be like maybe 6% of our students or so that are living off campus.
It's definitely higher than that.
Okay.
And this year is just that way. There are more families that feel that that live in the area that would prefer their student at home. So I would say it's more than, we certainly have a community, obviously a significant community of people who are living in Louisville, and there's a community of students that are also living elsewhere. And to Stephen's point earlier, there's a lot of effort to make sure students are integrated regardless of where they're living, so that they feel that they're still participating in classes and engaging in some of the opportunities that are provided by the program.
Yeah, I was definitely not thinking about students living at home. Yeah, so that's uncommon, and so that is more common this year for sure. So can students have guests from outside of the university visit and stay with them? So that's always, to my knowledge, been a no, like students, non-CU students staying, or like someone else staying overnight in the dorm. That is typically not allowed. So maybe that would be a good question for our hall director just to visit. But I anticipate that visitors in the dorm are going to be much more restricted this year. Specifically in Williams Village North, there are actually 2 doors that require key access in between the people that are sitting at the front desk, which are RAs, and it's staffed 24 hours a day. So we really get to know the community well, and they do have to have that key card access to go through the floors and get upstairs. So check out again the roadmap there's a whole housing and dining section for that, and those are great questions for our student housing team. You can email them at studenthousing@colorado.edu. Also, always reach out to us at prebusiness@colorado.edu. All 3 of us check that email account, and so do our peers. So if we are unsure of how to answer the question, we will get you connected to the right team of people. So prebusiness@colorado.edu. A lot of you should, have already engaged that way, but please reach out to us. If you feel like you have not had your questions answered here today, we're happy to set up a one-on-one Zoom meeting with you, give you a phone call, connect with you in another way to answer those questions. And so quite a few questions about holds. There are holds on your student account that don't need to be addressed. One is a drop hold. So that is something we put on to prevent them from dropping their pre-registered classes, Heather mentioned earlier. And it's not going to be removed until the first day of classes. So your student is right there, Adam. There probably are holds on their account that they don't need to address. But you know what? You're a great resource right now to say, show me the holds, let's read through them. What do they say? And should we be addressing them? Heather, do you know what maybe the other hold could be at this point?
I don't off the top of my head, but if they go into the Buff portal and click on it, it should provide some information about what it is and whether or not it's been, like what you would need to do to get it removed if it needs to be removed. My guess is there was a required health course for your student to complete that had a hold that came on in early August if they did not complete it. Yeah, so they just need to complete it. It's like an online module. It takes about 30 minutes.
Yeah, and if that hold's not coming off after a few days of them completing it, they probably haven't executed the final portion, or they can just reach out to the contact that's listed in the hold. Any other questions about that? You're struggling with that? That's a great reason to email us, prebusiness@colorado, and we can make sure you get to the right person. So are all classes available online or remote? Should a student need to continue classes while in quarantine, or should a student decide to return home earlier than Thanksgiving to complete classes? Great question, and the answer is yes. So if for some reason your student needs to move completely online, if it's before the semester begins, be sure to talk to Heather, reach out to us so that we can work on the appropriate schedule for them right now. If it comes later in the semester, they can absolutely work with their instructors. We are requiring our faculty and instructors to provide that option to students. However, if they're in that class and it has a designated time, then they're just going to make sure that they work directly with that instructor if they have to miss a time and do the work online. So just important that your students communicating, that they're working with us. We're happy to help them communicate with their instructor if they're having any issues, but definitely they can do 100% of their coursework online and remotely if they need to. So just to reiterate, if they need to make that change now before the semester begins, they really need to be working with Heather to do those changes now. If it happens later in the semester, still reach out to us. We can help with that, but it is going to be working with their instructor on the best way to facilitate that change. So great question. Let's see here. So we're still getting questions about like the, tasks and should they be completed. It really, does depend on those tasks. So really important that they're reading through what they are. 23 tasks kind of sounds like a lot, but it could be that there are just things that the CU Boulder community is wanting them to read and go through. So I would anticipate if there is a to-do list, if there are things that they need to complete and is saying that they need to complete them, they should read through them, get them checked off. But a great thing for you guys just to sit down and take care of. If we jumped on a Zoom call with you, we would have you like kind of screen share, show us what you're looking at and see just how important those tasks are. But good thing for you guys to go through. And if they are a task that's listed to be done, my assumption is that they would need to be completed. How old is a son? Too old for a timeout? I think you've got, as long as you're paying for that college tuition, you got a long time. I love it. So do most students use the Buff Bus to get to main campus? Great question we didn't talk about yet is transportation. Yes, a lot of our students use the Buff Bus. We had some communication that it could be a little delayed this year just with all of the sanitizing that will be done on the Buff Bus, but they run so efficiently. There's a map showing like where they are and everything that students can access. And especially when it gets a little colder, students are going to want to ride that bus, but they often use a bike, skateboard, or walk as well. So a lot of students are using that no matter where they live. I think there's this assumption that Willville is far away. It's not really any further than most of the dorms, and depending on where your classes are. So bike is really like highly recommended for any college community, any college campus. And then, skateboarding, walking are always an option too. So really not bad at all. We typically walk to main campus versus riding the bus. It's just nice to get out, and unless you're going like on the other side of campus. So we would probably take the bus at that point.
It's about a 20-minute walk, yeah. But it's a nice walk. No, it's not super far. It's not bad at all. That's, to Vanessa's point, that's my preference. And the bike path, walking path only requires you to cross one street. So it's generally considered the fastest way and very safe.
Yeah, great. So it looks like we've gotten through, I hope, all of your questions. So like I said, if we haven't, please reach out to us. We are always checking that email, prebusiness@colorado.edu. We're happy to, like I said, jump on a phone call or Zoom with you and walk through anything that you are concerned about. And we are also recording this session, and we will post it for you in the next couple of weeks here so you can refer back. But we're always happy to engage with you. Reach out to us. And if you think your student's not doing what they should be doing, it's a great way to make them connect. So please reach out to us. So thanks, everyone. It was great to meet you virtually, and we'll hopefully see you soon. Good luck with move-in, and we will meet your students in the next 2 weeks.